Pick up your phone and turn it over. Somewhere on the back, it will tell you who designed it, and the famous logo will tell you whose brand it carries. What it will never tell you is who actually built it, whose hands and whose vast factories physically assembled the object you are holding. For an astonishing share of the world's electronics, the answer is a single company most people have never knowingly bought anything from. It is called Foxconn, and this is a series about the companies that run the world. Foxconn represents a strange and overlooked kind of power, the power of the maker who is never named. We celebrate the companies that design our gadgets and the ones that sell them to us. But between the sleek design and the sharp shelf lies an enormous, unglamorous task, the actual physical building of billions of complex devices. Foxconn is the giant that quietly performs that task for much of the technology industry all at once. Formerly known as Hon Hai, Foxconn is the largest contract electronics manufacturer on Earth. A Taiwanese company operating vast facilities, above all in mainland China, it is the firm that other companies hire to turn their designs into finished products. It does not, for the most part, sell things under its own name. It builds other people's things on a scale so immense it is difficult to hold in the mind. The company was built by a determined founder who started in 1974 making simple plastic parts. From those humble beginnings, he constructed a manufacturing empire by mastering one thing above all others, the ability to assemble electronics faster, cheaper, and more reliably than almost anyone else in the world. Decades of relentless focus turned a tiny parts maker into the essential workshop of the digital age. Its most famous relationship, though it is far from its only one, is with Apple. Foxconn assembles a huge share of all the iPhones on Earth in colossal industrial complexes so large they have earned nicknames like iPhone City. A single such site can build a stunning fraction of the world's most profitable product. And these are not simply factories. They are self-contained industrial towns with their own dormitories, canteens, and clinics, entire cities built around the single purpose of producing devices in staggering quantities day and night without pause. And that points to the truly staggering dimension of Foxconn, its people. At peak production, the company has employed well over 1 million workers, making it one of the largest private employers in the entire world. Picture a workforce the size of a great city's population, or a nation's standing army, organized and mobilized for the sole purpose of building the gadgets that fill the world's pockets. The scale of human labor involved is almost impossible to picture. All of this generates revenue on a colossal scale, running to many hundreds of billions of dollars a year, placing Foxconn among the largest companies on the planet by sales. And yet, here lies one of the great ironies of the modern economy. For all that revenue, the profit it keeps is astonishingly thin, a tiny sliver on each device. This is the assembler's curse, and it defines everything about the business. The curse works like this. When a phone sells for $1,000, the lion's share of that value flows to the company that designed it and owns the brand. The company that physically built it, that employed the workers and ran the lines, earns only a few dollars for the labor. The glamour and the profit belong to the designer. The sweat and the thin margins belong to the maker. Foxconn lives deliberately on the thin side. So why is such a punishing position also such a powerful one? Because what Foxconn does is genuinely, fiendishly hard to replicate. Almost no one else on Earth can spin up a factory line staffed by hundreds of thousands of trained workers and hit impossible targets for quality, volume, and deadline again and again. That capability, the sheer operational muscle to build at this scale flawlessly, is a moat that a rival cannot simply buy. It must be built over decades. Foxconn is not entirely without rivals in this demanding trade. Competitors like Pegatron and the fast-rising Chinese firm Luxshare, along with Wistron, all fight for slices of the same contract manufacturing business. And its biggest customers, wary of depending too heavily on any single supplier, deliberately spread their orders around. But in sheer scale and capability, Foxconn has long stood at the very top of this hidden industry. Yet this system has a deeply human cost, and it must be faced honestly. The relentless pressure to build ever cheaper and faster has, at times, fallen hardest on the workers themselves. Years ago, A wave of worker suicides at its plants drew global horror and forced a harsh spotlight onto the grueling conditions, long hours, and immense strain behind our shiny devices. The convenience and low prices we enjoy have, at moments, been paid for in genuine human suffering. There is also a growing fragility in where all this making happens. For decades, an enormous share of the world's electronics assembly has been concentrated in China, which now looks increasingly risky in an age of great tensions and geopolitical friction. In response, Foxconn and its customers have begun shifting some production to places like India and Vietnam, quietly redrawing the map of where the world's gadgets are born. So we reach the question this series always asks of what would break if Foxconn vanished. And the answer is that the flow of finished electronics would cease badly. The world can design brilliant chips and beautiful phones, but someone still has to physically build them by the billion at near perfect quality. That capacity cannot be conjured overnight, and its sudden loss would ripple through every technology brand that quietly depends on it. Which brings us to the uncomfortable question, in a distinctly physical form. What does it mean that the actual making of our most treasured devices rests on a handful of giant assemblers and on the low-cost labor of millions of people, all hidden carefully behind glamorous logos that never mention them? We hold the finished object and admire the brand. We rarely think about the vast human machinery that actually brought it into being. To be fair, and it genuinely deserves saying, what Foxconn does is a logistical marvel of the highest order. Building a billion intricate devices a year to exacting standards with tiny error rates is one of the great manufacturing achievements in human history. And for all the hardship, it has also brought industrial employment and wages to millions of people, becoming a genuine engine of development, whatever the costs that came with it. And that is the deeper lesson of this particular giant. In a world obsessed with those who design and those who sell, the quiet, essential power belongs to whoever can actually make the thing, at scale, flawlessly, and cheaply. First, Son understood that the least glamorous job of all, the physical building, is also one of the most indispensable, an invisible foundation beneath the entire gleaming edifice of consumer technology. So the next time you admire a beautiful piece of technology and think of the clever company whose name it bears, spare a thought for the other giant, the unnamed one. Somewhere, in an enormous factory town you will never visit, a vast and largely invisible workforce built the very object in your hand and then handed all the glory and nearly all the profit to someone else entirely.